Hey, welcome to the Apex Energy Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Al-Qattan. Today, my guest is Andreas Christou. Andreas is a movement specialist, a nutrition expert, and a lifestyle optimization coach that specializes in quantum health. With his extensive expertise, he empowers individuals to achieve their goals and ambitions through holistic coaching and online programs. Serving as a guide, he helps people build peak health, vitality, and performance, ensuring both efficiency and effectiveness in their journey towards optimal well-being. How are you, Andreas?
Thank you for having me on your podcast.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for coming on. I just
My,
wanted to
my
ask,
pleasure.
man, what's your story? How did you get into quantum health?
So my story is pretty long, but if I just cut it to the quantum health piece. So basically how I got into that was because of my partner, Tina. She was going through some autoimmune condition that she developed over the years. And she kind of had it since she was a child, but it got worse over the years because she's originally from Finland. And as you know, in Finland, you don't have that much sunlight, but of course, you've got many other ways to biohack your environment. But of course, when you're younger, maybe you're not aware what you actually need to do to mitigate the lack of light. And this is why I believe that Finland is one of the leading countries in biohacking because they acknowledge that you actually need to biohack your environment due to the lack of light in that environment. So basically what happened was that led to us going down a deep rabbit hole because her autoimmune condition got worse and worse. And now we've managed to reverse it completely and she's in the best shape and best health of her life. And because of that, she was in this state where she didn't have the energy to be able to help herself out of the situation. So I was kind of like her support system. We were both trying together to figure out the answers of what do we actually need to do. So of course, we were both very passionate about training. Both of us have been training for 14 years at least. We've both been training right. We were both kind of eating right. We were both plant-based for a couple of years. She was mainly plant-based for her entire life until 2 years ago, where she went carnivore or more towards animal-based diet. That helped a ton. But then we only got to a certain point with the diet and with the exercise. We still both slept, 8 hours every night. We aimed to hit the basic fundamental numbers of sleep and rest. However, that still wasn't enough, and there was just something that was missing. So I dove down, a deep rabbit hole. I started listening to different podcasts, and I found Dr. Jack Kruse. And with the way that he explained it, he made so much sense when he talked about the blue lights and the non-native electromagnetic fields, and that how that can disrupt, our body's mechanisms, how it operates, and how basically everything gets messed up, how it works inside. So this is what led me down to try and understand how does this impact the training and how it impacts your quality of life in general, because training and exercise is just such a little small aspect of health and fitness. It's what you do those 23 hours outside of the training, which is even more important than the training. And training and exercise is a nice thing to do. It's not a necessity. Movement, however, like what we do in daily life, walking or cycling or swimming or doing functional movements to perform daily life, that is fundamental. We require that. It's a biological necessity. So that's how I kind of got into it through the struggles of my partner.
Okay, and what were some of the actionable steps, would you say, that really changed that or reversed that autoimmune disease?
Well, the number one thing that we did after I heard and studied Dr. Jack Kruse was to mitigate the blue light. So we started eliminating blue light at night as much as we could. So how we did this was that we bought a pair of blue light blocking glasses, the red ones. That was kind of like the lowest hanging fruit, right? It was one of the easiest things to reach out and to do. But then after that, I started to realize that is alone is not sufficient. So I realized that also the light, even if you're in your house, you've got your red light sorry, your red glasses on and you've got blue lights on, it's still hitting your skin and it's still kind of like passing through the back of the glasses. So it's still impacting your body, right? Because your skin also has photoreceptors just as your eyes do. And so it's going to impact your sleep and your recovery process. So slowly over time, I started implementing more and more things towards circadian appropriate environment. I started switching my light bulbs at night to red because that doesn't stimulate cortisol as much because cortisol blocks melatonin and then we cannot sleep well if our melatonin is not being released. And then I wasn't doing the sunrise or waking up with the sunrise yet. I wasn't ready to start doing that. So I started to minimize the blue light as much as possible. I started wearing yellow blue light blocking glasses in the day when I was coaching in the gyms. That helped a ton because when I wasn't wearing the yellow blue light blocking glasses in the daytime, I felt like this pressure headache. I felt that my whole being, I felt spaced out, very, very fried from the environment. And of course, that has a lot to do with the flicker of the light bulbs as well, especially if they are blue, the fluorescent light bulbs. Those flicker like a ton. And that, is really, really hard, like on the brain, because it's basically like switching a light bulb on and off multiple times in a second. And then your brain is trying to figure out what's going on,
Yeah, yeah. So I'm curious, what are some performance differences? If someone to do the exact same workout indoors and outdoors, just from your experience, how would there be a difference in performance?
Well, if we understand what does blue light do and what does non-native electromagnetic fields do to the body, then we can already from that know that just by simply switching the environment and I'm not in the environment, I'm not getting stolen my energy. So that's what blue light and non-native electromagnetic fields do. They steal your energy, they steal your electrons. And electrons are fundamental for everything in the body, required for every single process. And what happens is that when you go outside, you actually get donated electrons. So you are switching from an electron depleting environment to an electron rich environment. Nature is literally overflowing with electrons. It's wanting you to thrive. When you go outside and you're barefoot on the ground, you're getting the electrons from the ground, from the Schumann resonance. Then you're also getting electrons from the sun, when the sun strikes your skin, and then it converts that light into electrons from your melanin. And so just by simply making that switch and understanding that electrons are fundamental for our energy levels, that is going to drastically impact our performance overall because we are just not being robbed of unnecessary energy. When you're going to train or exercise anyway, you are using energy. So why would you want to be stolen double the amount of energy when you're trying to exercise? You don't want to leave the gym field trashed, even though you haven't trained that hard. And a lot of people feel that way and they don't understand, why is my energy zapped? Or even when you walk in a mall and there's so many electromagnetic fields, so many cell phones around you, so many blue lights. When you walk out that mall, why do you feel like crap? It's not because you were walking around for hours. It's because there is like literally, no electrons being donated to you and all the electrons being stolen from you. So you're just basically being harvested your energy. And the energy is required for so many of the cellular processes that we talked about. And it's so important for producing certain hormones. And when we are outside, our testosterone is becoming optimized. We are also lowering our cortisol levels, and we are getting more of our body into a parasympathetic state, which is actually what we want when we exercise. Even though our body does go into a sympathetic state when we exercise, it's way easier switches into parasympathetic state when you are resting in between of the exercise, instead of keeping your body excited the entire time. Let's say you go and exercise for 1 hour and your body is on the edge for 1 hour. That is way more taxing on the body versus if you think about in a training session, you do 20 to 25 sets of exercises. That means around 25 minutes of working time and the rest of the time is around resting. So only 25 minutes is actually truly working, whereas the rest of the time you're pretty much supposedly resting. if your environment is suboptimal, you're not actually resting. Your body is just feeling like it's constantly being bombarded. So when you're training outdoors, that's not happening. You're giving your body the opportunity to come back to baseline so it can actually recover.
It's so amazing that, it's just even these slight differences in our environment. And I think most people wouldn't even consider light to be that important. They can believe that diet, can change you and change your performance levels, but for light, that's something that people are not really sold on. So it
Mhm.
makes sense. If we take an ancestral lens, our ancestors have been under the sun for as long as we can
Yeah.
remember. And all of a sudden there was this change. So yeah, that makes complete sense. Uh, well, I wanted to ask you and transition a little bit and ask, what's the benefit of if someone were to go on your Instagram, you're always barefoot. You rarely have
Mm-hmm.
shoes on. So what's the
Mm-hmm.
benefit of grounding? Does that help us collect electrons?
Yeah, we gather electrons from the ground because electrons flow from a high concentration to a low concentration. So inside of the body in general, we don't want too many electrons either because those can turn into free radicals. The mitochondria needs to be able to funnel those electrons in a correct way for them to not escape so that they don't cause like damage to the system. So actually having too much is actually not good either. So nature is divine, everything is made perfect for air in balance. When you have both feet on the ground, like when you've gathered enough electrons, then you're also discharging your body from excess electricity at the same time. So this is one of the other benefits of grounding as well, that now that we have so many electromagnetic fields around us, what happens is that our body gets extremely charged from the electricity in the environment. There is so much dirty electricity from bad wiring, the switches, the sockets, the electrical appliances in our house, which is impacting us, and we act like a tuning fork to that. So we are a biological system. So when you're outside, when it's lightning, and you are very conductive, you are very likely to get struck by lightning, just like a tree, because you are a biological system, just like a piece of metal rod. So what that means is that's actually a good thing, and it's also a bad thing at the same time. The good thing is that you can discharge yourself to the ground, and that's why electrical appliances have a grounding compartment so that the excess electricity from the device goes into the ground. And so we are like an electrical device which needs to be plugged in and also needs to be discharged from the excess electricity from the environment. So not only are we harvesting those beneficial electrons from the native electromagnetic field from the ground, but we are discharging that non-native electromagnetic field that we have gathered inside our system. Because haven't you noticed that when you spend a long time indoors under blue lights and under non-native EMFs, you feel way more agitated, way more on the edge. Like you feel like you've drunk like so much coffee, even though you haven't drunk coffee. And one way to fix that very, very quickly is just simply by grounding on a piece of grass or on the beach. And then you automatically start to feel that you're going back to a parasympathetic state. That's because you are discharging your body and then you are regaining energy. So you are actually allowing your system to go back to a parasympathetic state.
I kind of want to just ask a side question.
Mm-hmm.
The science makes sense, and there's some literature, I've read it, but from a spiritual perspective, do you think there's a link there in a person feeling maybe, let's say, separate from his environment, and something as simple as connecting to the ground or even touching other people can have that
Mm.
effect? Do you think there's a link there?
Well, I believe that quantum biology and spirituality is intertwined. I don't think we can separate the two. I think what we are doing right now with quantum biology and circadian health and understanding the way that the mitochondria work and electrons is literally understanding the science of spirituality, what people have been trying to teach us for thousands of years, through different cultures. By meditating, by grounding, by gazing at the sun, some cultures do, and so this is all intertwined. And I believe it's just that we are now unraveling in a sideways manner, not actually saying that it's spirituality or ether or energy, but we are actually
Mm.
explaining it on a scientific level. What is actually happening? Why is nature actually so beneficial to us? I don't need someone to tell me, or to give me a study why nature is beneficial for me. I innately know when I go in that environment, I automatically feel better. So I do not need someone to tell me that I should spend more time there. It's like a self fulfilling act.
Prophecy. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Interesting. And I wanted to ask then, how does nose breathing fit into health? What are some benefits of nose breathing?
Oh, great question. Actually, a lot of people have been asking me this question lately, so I'm glad you asked. So nasal breathing is super important. It is you can't eat through your nose, right? You can only breathe through
Yeah.
your nose. So the primary function of the nose is to breathe. Your mouth is meant for eating, so that's why you need to keep it shut when you're not eating, except if you're talking. And so when we are nasal breathing, we are allowing everything that is meant to happen to happen. Whereas when we are mouth breathing, we are putting our body more into a sympathetic stress state. It's not that mouth breathing is inherently bad. It's just that it's a tool. We need to think of mouth and nose as different gears of the nervous system. When we mouth breathe, our body goes more into a sympathetic state because we most likely shallow breathe into the upper chest when we mouth breathe. Whereas when we nose breathe, the breath goes deep to the bottom of the lungs. And at the bottom of the lungs is found where the vagus nerve is attaching. So the vagus nerve is one of the cranial nerves of the brain, which goes all the way to the lungs and to the heart and to the digestive system. And through our breath, we are able to actually activate the vagus nerve. And when the vagus nerve gets activated, it puts us into a parasympathetic state. So by breathing through the nose, the breath is automatically deeper. The deeper the breath is, the more the vagus nerve gets stimulated and we go into a parasympathetic state. When we shallow breathe, so that means mouth breathing. Well, you can shallow breathe through the nose too, but it's more likely to happen through the mouth. And when you notice that people who spend time indoors on a computer or they are distracted, they are very not paying attention to the breath. So a lot of the times what you see is you see that the eyes are never blinking and they're not hydrating the eyes. And then they are having the mouth open because they have forgotten that they are inside of their body. So they're having an outer body experience in a negative way, if you
Yeah.
understand what I mean.
Yeah.
And so there are so many more benefits to nasal breathing, which I didn't discuss, but this is one of the very important things that I wanted to address, but there are so many more. So, for example, when you nasal breathe, you have a perfect balance between oxygen and carbon dioxide. So you are not exhaling more carbon dioxide than what you are. Sorry, I lost the. You are keeping a balance between the oxygen and carbon dioxide ratio. Whereas when you mouth breathe, when you exhale through the mouth, you are losing too much carbon dioxide too quickly. And why is this important? Because carbon dioxide actually allows oxygen to be released from the red blood cells to be able to go and do what it needs to do inside of the body, to oxygenate the cells. Whereas if we lose too much carbon dioxide too quickly, we are actually, even though we are breathing, we are actually restricting the body of oxygen. So what's happening is that we are slowly dying in a way.
Okay, yeah. So does that mean that breathing faster, which happens more likely through the mouth,
Mm-hmm.
creates this dysregulation in carbon dioxide and oxygen, right? Which leads
Yeah.
to so that would lead into the mitochondria, and that would result in less energy, just poor function in
Mm-hmm.
general. Is
Yeah,
that
yeah. I
correct?
mean, oxygen is an electron transporter in the
Mm.
electron transport chain. It helps to take the electrons from the electron transport chain to the end, so our body can generate ATP, which is the cellular currency inside of the body. And when we don't have the oxygen, what happens is that our body starts to starve from oxygen. So you require that to produce energy inside of the body. And this is why nasal breathing is so fundamental to energy regulation and energy metabolism. And not only that, but when you think about all the other benefits of nasal breathing as well, I mean, of course, that is fundamental, where the energy is going and how it's actually happening. But if we think about also the postural effects that nasal breathing has as well on the jaw and the neck and the spine, and that how impacts your overall quality of life too. Because when you nasal breathe, your tongue should be touching the roof of your mouth, and it acts like a natural brace. So what does this mean? It means that actually your teeth are actually constantly moving a little bit, and when you have something that is like your tongue, which is perfectly shaped and round, you actually prevent yourself from having to wear braces if you do this from a very young age. So this is why parents have to pay very close attention to how their child is breathing and to try and make them nose breathe as much as possible, because this will actually allow their tongue to shape the destiny of their teeth, and then they won't have to wear braces in the future.
Okay, gotcha. And what are some, I mean, but what if someone was struggling? If a client said that it was hard for them to breathe through their nose, a lot of people tell me complaints that, it's blocked, right? So what
Mhm,
solution would you give them?
mhm. Well, actually, the funny thing is that when the carbon dioxide levels inside of the body increase, the nose begins to open up. So this is just something that you need to give your body a little bit of opportunity and a bit of a chance. If you haven't been using your nose in general for a long period of time, think of it as it has collected cobwebs inside, and you really need to do some spring cleaning. So you need to allow your body to adapt to that mechanism again, because literally the body has forgotten how to breathe through the nose. And when you do breath holding, for example, so when you exhale all the air out and you hold your breath, the carbon dioxide inside the body begins to rise extremely quickly because of metabolism. And then that actually allows the nose to open up more as a survival response. Your body never wants you to be under threat or under stress. And so the survival response opens your nostrils up more so you can take in more air, because it acknowledges that the carbon dioxide levels inside of the body have increased so much that it's now starting to become threatening to the organism. So it's trying to increase the amount of oxygen that's coming in and to exhale more carbon dioxide out. And this is why when you see a lot of people, when they're really struggling in exercise, they really like want to blow the air out through the mouth. But I try to make people breathe in and out through the nose, no matter if you are having a hard time. So you should only be pushing yourself so hard where you can actually keep your mouth shut. You should never be pushing yourself more than where you feel like you need to open your mouth, because that means that you are overriding your nervous system. So the nose is a protective mechanism to keeping your nervous system safe. So if you override that and you start mouth breathing, now you are overriding your nervous system, and you are going into a sympathetic overdrive. So you are using too much of your resources.
So do you help some of your clients do this? Like, do you maybe use some mouth tape or something, or just tell them to work out until they feel the need to breathe through their mouths, and then they stop? Like, is that how you
So
do it?
what we do is the key is to not start with the training. The training is the hardest part. Someone who has never hasn't made nasal breathing a habit, like an automatic thing that they're doing in daily life. If you are not doing it outside of training, I don't want you to be doing it inside training yet. So what I want you to do is to just do basic daily life tasks, simply even when you are sitting down, just to practice the nasal breathing to keep your mouth closed. It's first about becoming aware of the posture of the mouth and the tongue position. Just being aware of that makes you aware of, is my mouth closed or is it open? And then just because of that, you will automatically nose breathe if your mouth is shut, because you don't have no other way to breathe, And so what we want to do is condition the body outside of training through daily life tasks, walking, going upstairs, doing everything nasally, because this transfers also into your sleep. I'm not a very big fan of mouth taping in the nighttime, for the reason being that you are bypassing, or you are not programming your body correctly during the daytime. If you are actually mouth breathing in the night, you need to be doing it all the time, so that it actually becomes a habit, so that when you do sleep, your mouth still remains shut. It's now an inbuilt mechanism. It's like a program when you go to the gym and you learn a new skill, that skill starts to become easier and easier over time. It's the same thing with nasal breathing. You have to train it. So once you've gotten very efficient in your daily life, then we can start to think about going for a small jog, nasal breathing, because jogging or anything more cardiovascular demanding endurance type is going to be way more difficult nasal breathing compared to lifting weights or doing resistance training, right? And then afterwards, when that event is over and you've managed to only nasal breathe during the endurance exercise, their daily life is going to feel so easy because you've endured something so much more harder through the nose.
And do you go through a similar process with light? Do you lead them slowly into doing more outdoor things, or is it just like they can go and
Well,
do
we
stuff
need to meet
outdoors?
we need to meet people where they're at. So I need to first understand the person's lifestyle. What are they doing as a job? Like, how is their current situation? You know, how wrecked is their body? And depending on how drastic changes we need to make. So if someone is in a position where they really need to make a change right now, we will do everything possible to help that and to fix the environment. But if someone is just wanting to improve their health and vitality and they're already in quite good health, then we can take it a little bit easier because their body has more energy. They haven't gotten their body to a state where it's extreme, and so I always like to start with the lowest hanging fruits, which is ground every day, as much as you can. Go barefoot somewhere outside on a piece of grass, at least 30 minutes every day, or at the beach. Go for a walk on the beach or anywhere where the surface is conductive and wet, desirably. And also to try and wake up with the sunrise. I acknowledge that for many people that is quite tough, especially if the circadian rhythms are out of whack. So I like to begin with telling people to invest in some blue light blocking glasses, just like I did, start with the lowest hanging fruits and start with those, block the blue light at night, block the unnecessary blue light in the day with yellow glasses, and then eventually transition all your lighting inside of your home to more circadian appropriate. So after sunset, you're not using any blue lights and you're also blocking the blue and turning your Wi-Fi off at night and distancing the electromagnetic fields from your body as much as you can when you don't need to be exposed to those. So this is the approach that I use. It's a step-by-step approach, starting from the lowest hanging fruit so that people can transition into this way of life a little bit easier, because for some individuals it's completely foreign and they do not simply understand why I would be doing this. But once they start to feel that just simply the impact of wearing the glasses, because the glasses alone will give them a huge benefit. They will notice that they feel sleepier, more tired towards the evening time. Their quality of sleep will be improved. That will only take them so far, but they will notice the difference. That will motivate them to be able to dig deeper and to take it even further and live more in alignment with nature, which is what we're trying to do here.
Amazing. Do you do cold exposure as well with your clients? Is that something you advise?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so cold exposure is fantastic because it optimizes the mitochondrial function. And this is something that's extremely useful for people who live in cold countries. But even in warm countries, it's fantastic as well, because you are basically supercharging your body when you do it in a warm country where you have a lot of sunlight. But if you do it in a cold country, it's fundamental. Our body has adapted, to be able to survive in hot and cold, and without light and with light. And so when we don't have the light present, we have to create light within us, infrared light. So our mitochondria produce infrared light, through the metabolism when they make energy, and they make energy more efficiently and even better when they are exposed to cold. And so this is why cold is so important. And we want to implement that as a strategy to try and optimize the mitochondrial function in a place where we don't have so much light. But we, of course, need to do it strategically and wisely, depending if you're a man or a woman, what time of the day you're doing it, because it is a stressor on the body, right? Sunlight is a stressor, exercise is a stressor, cold is a stressor. It's a hormetic type of stress, which gives you something back, whereas some acts like blue light, non-native electromagnetic fields, those are also stressors, but they don't give you anything back. They just steal from you. In a cold environment, in cold countries, it's absolutely fundamental to do cold exposure, because cold actually allows our mitochondria to work better. And when our mitochondria work better, allows us to make more infrared light internally. And this is extremely important because this is allowing all the cellular processes to work as if we were exposed to light, to the sun. And so this is why it's extremely important for people who are living in Nordic countries or places which is cold and dark to implement cold exposure, but they need to do it wisely, depending on if you are a man or a woman, whether you have a lot of stress in your life already. And because cold exposure is actually a stressor. And so when we are overloading our system, if we already have a lot of stress in our life and we also add cold exposure, that can actually not be so beneficial for us. It can actually zap us from our energy levels if our adrenals are already fried, right? If we have chronically elevated cortisol levels. Whereas if we are already in quite a good state and we are taking care of the other circadian habits and our nutrition and our sleep as much as we can, then we can probably tolerate more cold. And a lot of the times why some individuals actually cannot tolerate cold, where they find cold too cold, why do some individuals find it like okay, tolerable, and some not? That all comes down to the mitochondrial function and how does the body generate heat. And the body generates heat through the mitochondria. And so this is why if you have messed up circadian rhythms, that is going to impact your mitochondrial function and inevitably your heat production. So you need to be very wise when it comes to cold exposure and first fix your circadian rhythms before thinking about doing cold.
Okay. Let's transition now. I really want to get your opinion on diet, right? So let's say you had a client and they had autoimmune disorder, right? What kind of dietary actionable plans would you give to them?
Well, that is very specific when it comes to autoimmune. So we're not giving any medical advice to anybody, of course, and you should always consult this with your physician or your doctor. But what I would personally do is I would do an elimination style diet, and we would start eliminating everything from the diet, which I believe to be an irritant to the immune system. Because typically in an autoimmune condition, you have multiple things happening at the same time, right? So you have a gut dysbiosis, so the gut bacteria are not in balance. You have leaky gut. Typically, your circadian rhythms are off, which are causing a lot of that. And you are also eating a lot of foods which are triggering your immune system. Maybe your environment where you are living in is suboptimal. It's not supportive for your body or your biology because of excess electromagnetic fields or blue lights. And all of these things are impacting our digestive system and our nervous system. And so when it comes to autoimmune conditions, it's very multifactorial. And so if we only look at the diet aspect, we need to think what does not trigger the gut. So we start to eliminate things from the diet, things that you already see on packaging, which says that, which are allergens, things like even eggs, for example. Maybe for some individuals, they cannot tolerate eggs, fish, soya, gluten, some excess sugars, any processed things that could irritate the immune system, or artificial things. Because when you have leaky gut, what actually happens is it's like your gut is like a cheesecloth, and it's allowing all of those things to enter into your bloodstream, which shouldn't be entering into your bloodstream. Whereas when the gut is healthy, it's very tight. And so that means that the cheesecloth is non-existent, right? It's more like a bag which doesn't have any holes in it and doesn't allow anything to go into your bloodstream. So then that means we start to decrease the inflammation in the body when we are not irritating the immune system. The immune system is always trying to protect you. Like your body's always trying to defend you. It's never working against you. It's always working for you. And so when we are supporting it as much as we can by reducing the irritants, then we need to think about fixing and healing the gut lining by addressing all of the other lifestyle factors which can be contributing to that. And because what is autoimmunity is when your body is actually attacking itself, but it's only attacking itself because it actually thinks that your cells are an invader. But that's only occurring because things from your digestive system are leaking into your bloodstream, causing systemic inflammation. And this is happening over a prolonged period of time, leading to chronic inflammation, therefore damaging tissues inside of your body and causing havoc.
So by elimination diet, do you mean the carnivore diet?
It doesn't necessarily need to be a carnivore diet, but the carnivore diet is a fantastic way to do that, to eliminating the majority of the irritants, because in a carnivore diet, you're basically eating only meat and salt. In some cases, you're eating eggs and dairy, but for some individuals, as I mentioned, dairy and eggs could also be irritating their gut or causing them bloating. They're not necessarily bad. Our body is actually meant to be extremely resilient and to be able to tolerate fruits, vegetables, and meats, and eggs, and fish, and dairy. However, when the gut is not healthy, we actually cannot tolerate those foods. And so, if, for example, you are doing a carnivore diet and you have been doing it for many, many years, and you introduce something back in and your body reacts negatively to that, that's just a sign that we are avoiding the root cause. So we are not fixing the root cause. That means that we are just patching the problem by eating a carnivore diet, so preventing of irritating the immune system and the nervous system. But then we are not fixing what is actually causing the leaky gut in the first place, if it's actually not the diet that's causing it. You
Is it
know.
possible to do like a vegan elimination diet or like a vegetarian elimination diet?
It's way more difficult because vegetables, soya, vegan vegetarian style diet can be quite inflammatory in the way that that it's got a lot of processed foods, and to be able to get adequate amounts of protein, you are forced to eat high amounts of soya, high amounts of processed plant-based burgers, or anything that is basically plant-based made in a factory is, of course, not ideal. Like when you look at the ingredients of what's in a steak, it's just beef, right? 100% beef. But when you look at a plant-based burger, it's got like 50 ingredients. How do you think your immune system is going to react to that when it has to scan every single one of those molecules and it doesn't even understand the majority of them? So they are totally foreign to the body. And now you have created absolute havoc inside of your system. So people really need to think about these things when they are considering these type of diets, because how are you going to get adequate amounts of protein if you are not consuming soya and if you are not consuming plant-based alternatives which are high in protein? Yes, of course you can take pea protein or something like this, but that is not as bioavailable as eating animal-based. And a lot of the times vegetables can be a huge irritant to the gut, because vegetables, compared to fruits are way easier on the gut because they don't have so many defense chemicals and they don't have so much fiber compared to vegetables. And vegetables are more defended, and especially when they are eaten raw, you are not like reducing those defense chemicals. So then you are making it way harder for your digestive system to be able to even absorb any of the nutrients. It's almost like you're not even eating anything when you eat something raw. It's just going through your system through the other side. And so you're actually irritating the gut more because you're not giving the body what it needs. But then a lot of those defense chemicals, which plants have to defend themselves from bugs, for example, bugs eating them, and they basically kill the bugs by releasing these defense chemicals, those are actually going into our system, and it could be impacting our immune system.
Okay, and you have a bachelor's in nutrition, right?
Yes.
So what's the difference between you graduating and studying the nutrition and you now in terms of outlook on nutrition in general? Is it a big difference?
Well, it's quite huge. Yeah, I had to change, not change, but more like relearn everything that I learned there. Of course, I learned some fundamental things about metabolism, about mitochondria, which was quite useful actually. And I never really paid attention back then when I was doing those studies. I didn't think that was
Yeah.
important. I was kind of thinking, okay, let's cut to the chase and get straight to the food part. Tell me what I need to be eating. And,
Yeah.
I didn't actually realize that actually understanding metabolism, understanding how the mitochondria work could be actually so useful as it is for me right now, because now it all makes sense to me why I was learning that. And actually, I can use that knowledge against the teachings that they actually taught me in the university, and how actually to optimize the mitochondrial function. And, we are taught in university that you need to consume low amounts of salt. You need to eliminate saturated fats. You need to reduce your meat intake because it causes colon cancer. You need to you need to increase your omega-6, fatty acid consumption, all this kind of stuff. And that goes against everything that basically I teach and preach now. And I have found it to be, through personal experience and through client success, to be the exact opposite. So when I have reduced the 6 to 12 servings of carbs that they recommend on the food pyramid every day, if we eliminate that and we replace it with 6 to 12 servings of meat and eggs, or unrefined sea salt, I find it that people go towards vitality, health, performance, increased muscle mass, fat loss, and they feel cognitively sharp and amazing.
Yeah, definitely agree with you on that one, even just from my experience of just eating more meat and decreasing carbs.
Mm-hmm.
That's, does that worry you that, you went to a university and it was all based on, epidemiological observational studies, right? These things about red meat and saturated fats that are not
Mm-hmm.
rooted in reality at all. Does that worry
Mm-hmm.
you, the state of medicine, nutrition in general? I mean, what's your
Mm-hmm.
opinion on
I
that?
am
That
I
most of it
am
is wrong.
I am concerned, but at the same time, I am hoping for people to become critical thinkers. So I acknowledged that as I was doing my nutrition degree, towards the end of it, that a lot of the stuff that I was learning was extremely inaccurate based on my personal experiences and the success stories of my clients. And I realized that when I did what they recommended, it actually wasn't ideal at all. And I actually gained weight when I did what they recommended.
Wow.
And I felt like crap. So I go with my gut feeling and my personal experience and that of my clients. And I can see that the majority of people who I speak to who transition to this carnivore or opposite way of thinking and eating compared to what they teach us, they actually feel so much better and they feel great. And I'm actually not worried about what they're teaching people, but I just want people to become critical thinkers and to actually think for themselves and to start to question things, because I used it to my advantage to get those degrees. So I have a voice to be able to speak about these topics, to say that I'm a nutritionist, and to be able to relearn and unlearn everything that I've learned to be able to help individuals. That's how I looked at it. It was the same thing when it comes to movement sciences as well. A lot of the things in movement sciences which we are taught or are educated in there are because everything is tied a lot to the medical paradigm, and universities are funded by the medical system. That's typically the case, and they are attached to hospitals and things like this. And there was a lot of recommendations for surgeries, spinal surgeries, leg surgeries, when it comes to movement. And that I totally disagree with that. I'm a big believer in holistic health, and I have this fundamental belief that the body actually has the ability to heal itself if given the right environment to do so and the right building blocks to do so. So the right nutrition, the right environment, and you're actually taking the right action steps towards health. Of course, medicine and nutrition and all of this has a fundamental role in emergencies. So actually, in some cases, like some individuals who are in an accident, for example, like hospital surgeries are incredible. I mean, it's a blessing. But for chronic situations and to be able to go towards health and vitality, it's absolutely not ideal. And when you look at what they are doing disease management. It's not health optimization. There is a massive difference in that. When someone goes to a nutritionist, a dietitian in a hospital, they are just trying to manage their disease. They are not trying to take them towards optimal health. So they are trying to help them survive, not thrive. There is a massive difference in that.
Hmm. Okay, and that's where you come in as a quantum
Yeah,
coach and nutrition.
when people reach the end of the road and they feel that they don't want to follow the centralized paradigm anymore, and they want to look outside into a decentralized lens and see what else is actually possible, that is when they start to find people like myself, like you, like Dr. Jack Cruz, And then they start to realize, wow, there is a whole other entire world to holistic health and well-being that I didn't realize was possible. And actually, I can take um, responsibility in my own hands of my own self and my own health. Because if we don't take that responsibility, we are putting that responsibility in someone else's hands. I do not trust anybody else to take care of my health than myself, because I know that I have to take action steps every single day to improve myself. If I do not do that, because it's what you do on a daily basis which takes you forward, which makes you thrive. It is not what you do once every week. It is what you do every day. It is how you breathe, because you are doing it all the time. So it's, if you think about what you do the most, that is going to have the biggest impact on your body and your health, and your mental health as well.
Well, I'd like to close with just a story, not even a story, but in my experience, everyone that I'm meeting that's interested in, the carnivore diet and quantum health and all this stuff, it all came from this source of pain. And
Mm-hmm.
it's so beautiful. You couldn't even write it in a book. It's like the pain is uniting us in a way, and it makes us connect in a certain way. And it brings us to all these different ideas. And like you were saying, becoming our own healers. And now I'm introduced to a whole community of people with a very like eerily similar stories as to mine and other people's. Is it the same with you when you made that transition? Was it like you discovered a whole new world of people?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm so grateful to connect with so many like-minded individuals, and it's so nice to see that so many people are on the same wavelength, because I realized that in the past, even when I transitioned into barefoot shoes, I remember that before I even fixed many of the other aspects of my life, just by simply changing the type of shoes that I was wearing, I was starting to observe on the street people that were wearing barefoot shoes, and I started to notice a pattern that people who were wearing barefoot shoes were more likely aware of other areas of life. They were more conscious. And just even if I went up to them and said to them, hey, nice shoes. I see that you're wearing barefoot shoes. That's cool, because, it's very distinct. Not everybody wears barefoot shoes, so it's easy to spot. And so then
Yeah.
you're able to actually like relate and have a conversation. Maybe they don't agree with you on every aspect, for example, like diet. But they're able to connect with you and vibe with you on a different level, compared to someone who is just living in the matrix and doing a 9 to 5 job and not conscious of any aspect of their life. So I noticed that there is a clear pattern with people who have these type of interests. When I got into the more of an animal based diet, when I got into circadian health, quantum health, it opened me up to a huge community who is interested in very similar things. And the nice thing about quantum health and circadian health community is that most people, they are interested in eating the way that nature intended, and thinking the way that nature intended, and spending time in nature, and all of that, is leading us back to nature and making us more human again, bringing us together as a tribe.
Yeah. And I'd like to close that off with absolutely. I think I don't know if you would agree with me, let me know. But yeah, we're modern humans, right? We have amnesia. We don't remember what it's like how our ancestors lived. So we have to almost use science to navigate ourselves back. Like science
Mhm.
is actually a crucial part of the journey as a modern human because there's no
Yeah.
other way to navigate truth in that manner, right? I'm not a hunter-gatherer who's living in, the
Mhm.
Amazon with sun and eating all this good food. I was born in a society that feeds me sugar, a society that places me indoors all the time. I'm born as a baby and there's blue light everywhere and all these things. So I have to use science. I think science is the only way to navigate back.
Mhm.
Would you agree?
I would say science is a useful tool to get you in the right place where you need to be. And once you figure out that nature actually makes you feel so good that you actually don't need someone to tell you that it makes you feel good, then that's where the magic happens, is that once it becomes a habit and it's automatic, it's a fantastic tool to get the ball rolling. But then after that, it's something that you want to be listening to your intuition more, to listening to your inner wisdom, your inner guidance, and to guide you towards what is the best thing and that feels right for you. Because even if science says one thing, sometimes doing the opposite of that might make you feel better, and if you're doing it thinking in a non-biased way, of course. Um, so yeah, I believe that science is fundamental to try and understand like where we've come from and to go back to our roots. This is extremely important because it's because we've gone away from our roots, which we are seeing so many issues in today's world. And what we are teaching and talking about in this podcast right now is literally about revisiting our roots. And, it's not that you are getting some kind of magic by exercising and moving outdoors. It's just simply being human. It's going back to your roots, doing what you were actually fundamentally meant to do. Before, we didn't used to exercise. We used to move and hunt and gather. That was our form of exercise. Exercise is a very modern thing that we do to combat our prolonged sitting behavior and our stagnated lifestyles. And so, yes, of course, lifting weights and doing resistance training is great for building muscle. And I acknowledge that that's super good for the mitochondria, super good for your glucose metabolism. But if you lived in alignment with nature and you were forced to fast because you didn't manage to catch your food, and then eventually you found the fruit tree and you ate carbs because even though you didn't want to eat carbs, but you ate carbs because that was the only choice that you had, and then you had to fast another 3 days until you find your food. Now you are starting to live in alignment with nature. You're fasting without wanting to fast. You're eating carbs even though you don't want to eat carbs. And then you eat meat because that is what's providing your body with the most amount of nutrients, meat and organs. One topic which we didn't cover actually was about the mental health aspect of being outside. I would like to touch upon that. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, go ahead. 100%. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so what I wanted to say was that by being outside, because in our eyes, we have different proteins, and those proteins get photo activated by being outdoors through the sunlight. And this is extremely important because that also regulates our mood and our energy levels. And you probably know about dopamine and how we're all dopamine addicts these days and how we are always trying to get like a dopamine hit. And what does this mean? It means that we're trying to get a quick boost of energy for the lack of dopamine, the natural dopamine that we have in our system. And by being outside, we are actually naturally raising our dopamine levels, and it's elevating gradually throughout the day. So we are actually becoming addicted to being outdoors. And this is one beautiful thing about waking up with the sunrise, is that it actually starts to activate those receptors and those proteins in the eye to tell the rest of the body what to do. That also regulates our melatonin levels, our testosterone, all our other hormones through the light that we are exposed to. However, if we are indoors in artificial blue light, we are actually not getting any of that. And that is actually depleting our dopamine levels. It's actually making us more depressed because we're getting our energy stolen. And because our dopamine is rising so high that when we actually get off the device, it feels like a massive crash, and we feel like we need to continuously scroll social media, eat crap food, get cheap entertainment, do all these type of things that are suboptimal to our health and well-being. And you know that mental health comes down to physical health. We cannot separate the mind from the body. The body is inside, the mind is inside the body. And obviously your brain is an organ, right? And so if you are actually not taking care of your body in general, in your circadian rhythms, of course your mental health is going to be messed up. If you are depressed, anxious, you are like dopamine addicted, you need to fix your circadian rhythms, and you need to fix your way of life in general, and to minimize your blue light exposure and your non-native electromagnetic fields that you're exposed to, because this is greatly impacting your mood and how your outlook on life in general.
Absolutely. I completely agree. And in every aspect, every moment in my life has pointed towards that truth as well. When I was going through issues with mental health, all the solutions were to take care of my body as well, right? And they say, oh, when you're
Yeah.
depressed, exercise. When you're depressed, eat better food, right? It's because the whole
Hmm.
body is just one organ. And
Hmm.
I would say, even from a scientific perspective, the link between the two is mitochondria, right? It
Hmm.
doesn't matter with
Hmm.
mitochondria, it's for your brain and it's for your body. So if you
Hmm.
take care of mitochondrial health, you're taking care of the entire health. There's no separation between the nervous
Hmm.
system, the central nervous system, the brain, and the rest of your body and your immune system. So, absolutely, yeah, I completely agree.
Cool. Yeah, and you know that many individuals are only told to address the mental aspect by isolating the mental thoughts, or they go to some kind of, psychotherapy or some form of therapy which is addressing only talking to someone. Of course, that can be useful, but then it's only going to take you so far, right? If you're not addressing the root cause, which is actually taking care of your body, and just automatically by taking care of your body you are putting yourself in a better state, in a better position, an advantageous position to be able to have a better state of mind. And then that automatically is starting to transform your life because you are making better decisions, you are building better habits, and that's making you happier automatically.
So, are you saying like you don't believe in this like self-talk and I'm not being extreme with it, but like it's not as effective as people think it is, right? They're going to a therapist constantly, but their diet is the same. They're not doing anything to help their mitochondrial function. So, of
Hmm.
course, you're going to have to continue and play this, how do you speak to yourself in your head game and what happened to you as a child and stuff. And not to mitigate that stuff, but I've found in my own life, man, it's like, yeah, it really doesn't matter what I tell myself, how much I journal. As long as I do an ice bath and I'm in ketosis and I'm out in the sun, it's like I feel amazing. It doesn't matter what my head tells me. And it actually inversely changes my internal thought patterns. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, it depends how deep your trauma levels are, right? So every individual has experienced a different level of trauma in their life, and everyone experiences trauma. There is a single person who hasn't gone through a traumatic event, and every single person feels that that is the worst thing that anybody could ever go through because it's very individual, it's very personal. So it impacts you on a personal level. And of course, everything begins in the mind also, to be able to take the step to take care of yourself, you have to start from here, right? So you have to initiate the thought and the state of mind to put yourself. You need motivation to get started, but you need discipline to keep going. But then you don't
Mm.
need discipline anymore when your body's actually supporting you to keep the ball rolling. That's the whole idea. Is that a lot of people think that, oh, I need discipline. It's meant to feel hard. I'm meant to struggle. No, actually, you're not meant to struggle all the time. You're meant to actually get your body to a point where things are happening so efficiently and effectively that you're actually loving what you do. And it's a way of life. You are changing the way that you are living your life. You're not trying to do a quick fix because, yes, of course, you can do ice baths for a certain period of time and exercising for a period of time to fix your mental health. But then what happens when you stop? Are you planning on going back? Like, why would you stop something that makes you feel good?
Hmm. Amazing. Well, thank you for coming on, Andreas. It was a pleasure. I learned a lot today.
It was my pleasure. It was a fun conversation. Thank you.